From magical islands to the middle of nowhere, here are 9 of the most isolated homes in the world. Number 9. Crystal Mill. Crystal Mill is one of the most photographed sites in Colorado. It sits in a precarious position on an outcropping of rock just above the Crystal River. Framed by beautiful aspens with a backdrop of stunning mountains, it has an undeniable, breathtaking visual appeal. Despite the name, it's not a place that milled for crystals. It was actually a compressor station. The water of the river would turn a water wheel that would power an air compressor, which would allow power tools to be used, including mining for silver when it was in the area, which obviously meant that it was a place of not just business, but wealth. It was built in 1893 by George C. Eaton and B.S. Phillips, promoters of the Sheep Mountain Tunnel and Mining Company. In 1917, though, the mine was closed, and the Crystal Mill went unused. It's still around to this day, but it's owned privately, so you probably shouldn't go there without permission. This ensures that no vandalism or destruction to the property is done. It's located 6 miles east of Marble, right before the ghost town of Crystal. It's only reachable in the summer and fall months by a rough, narrow, 4-wheel drive road. But should you go there, you'll find a lovely piece of history that hasn't been touched in quite some time. Number 8. Just Ruminouf Island. Where's the world's smallest island with someone actually on it? In the United States, there is the world's smallest inhabited island within the confines of the St. Lawrence River. The island itself is called just Ruminouf Island because this island literally has just enough space on it for a single house and a yard, and not much else. It's also a local landmark. While no larger than a tennis court, it's big enough to allow certain amenities, to really call it a home for users to live in and on. This includes having a tree and occasionally having room for putting out chairs and such, because since it's a flowing river, it has high and low tides. When the tide is high, the yard is consumed by the water. Then at low tide, the family can come out and relax in the yard and sit in the chairs. The family that built and owns the house is the Sizeland family. What a perfect last name for the location. They came to find the island in the 1950s and felt it would be a perfect place for a getaway home. Whether you think it actually is up to your interpretation, but you can't deny that having an island all to themselves is something that would appeal to many families. Water damage aside, of course. Number 7. Svalbard Global Seed Vault. So I call dibs on this place when the world ends, okay? This will be my home. On the island of Spitsbergen, you'll find a place known as the Svalbard Global Seed Vault. Conservationist Cary Fowler, in association with the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, made this vault as a backup of sorts for all the seeds in the world. To clarify, in certain areas of the world are gene banks, or places that contain samples of plant and animal life in order to use in case of a global apocalypse. It may sound like something from a sci-fi movie, but it's something a lot of people have put thought into. Thus why there are multiple gene banks all over. For some reason, this makes me happy. The vault is a backup in case the main seed vaults are damaged and their samples ruined. It's why it was put on a remote island in Norway. Every year, new seeds are added to the vault and are either stored or frozen, depending on the contents to ensure that they last. Most people will never have to see this home, and that's a good thing, because should it ever truly be needed, that would mean that the end has come and we need what's inside to survive. Number 6. House on Ellday Island. Vestmannaeyjar, did I say that right? Includes a cluster of gorgeous islands located near the southern tip of Iceland. Among these chunks of land sits one incredibly beautiful island known as Ellday. If you travel to this tiny little island, you will find one single house sitting alone on a grassy pasture. The house looks incredibly tiny compared to the rest of the island, and unlike many houses, it has to deal with its own weather phenomena. Because the contour of the island it's on, it has to endure incredibly violent winds, which means that this particular home is not something that everyone would want to live in, if for no other reason than to not deal with the winds that can be incredibly loud and powerful. About 300 years ago, 5 different families called this island home, although they did not live in the house that currently sits on the island. Instead, they resided in huts. They survived here by fishing, raising their own cattle, and hunting the puffins in the area. Thanks to the naturally grassy land, the cattle did well here, as did the families. In the 1930s, the residents packed up and left. They realized that their isolated community didn't have the same opportunities available elsewhere. The only thing the families couldn't find anywhere else was a better spot for puffin hunting. Despite most modern amenities being completely vacant, the island retreat does have a sauna. The house serves as a retreat for a local hunting association. The members come to the cabin for a simple shelter and a sauna when they're not out hunting puffins. The lonely, tiny house inspires and captivates the imaginations of young and old alike. Number 5. Wordy House. Antarctica is known as one of the coldest and most barren places in the world today, and yet, despite its desolation, many people have tried to go and make homes there to research and observe the conditions of the continent. This includes the British, who made the Wordy House to study it. Wordy House was established on January 7, 1947 on Winter Island. The hut is named after James Wordy, the chief scientist and geologist on Shackleton's Endurance expedition of 1914 to 1917. While it was built there to study Antarctica, its primary focus was actually meteorology. This particular study wasn't short either. It lasted until 1954, when the place was eventually shut down and its duties were transferred to others in Antarctica. But at the time, it was a large facility. As well as the living quarters, Base F included a Nissen hut and a balloon shed, both of which are gone now. Balloons were released daily to gather meteorological data. A greenhouse on the side of the main hut was used for growing vegetables. To the southwest of the hut, a timber sign still stands with the words British Crown Land, a relic of the pre-Antarctic Treaty Age when claims to Antarctica were still actively maintained. The Wordy House is now a labeled historical site and is protected to ensure that it lasts. Number 4. Meteora. This monastery can be found on the impressive, gigantic rocks, a breathtaking landscape, in Kalimbaka at the northwestern edge of the plain of Thessaly within Greece. Its name translates to lofty as well as elevated. Meteora is not built on a higher plane, but rather built on a sandstone pillar, allowing it to be noticed from miles around. Due to its location, it makes many people want to go and see it for themselves. The first people believed to inhabit the area in the monastery were hermit monks from the Neolithic era of history, more specifically the 9th century. It wasn't until the 14th century that the monastery was built upon the rock itself. The sheer spectacle, somehow glued atop the slender stone pinnacles by medieval masons and now collectively listed as a World Heritage Site, makes this one of the most visited attractions in all of Greece, allowing it to remain uninjured by the whims of man and honoring the history and unique engineering that led to it being made. Number 3. Moonhole. Despite the name, no, the Moonhole is not a crater on the moon that people live in, though we're not ruling out that it may be for some other species. This Moonhole refers to a place on the island of Bequia in the Grenadines. The remote homes are built in an area beneath a naturally forming rock arch that was transformed into a remote private compound of open-air homes in the 1960s. It was founded by Thomas and Gladys Johnson, who retired from an advertising business in New York and founded the Moonhole community on the narrow western tip of the island. It wasn't easy, but they eventually constructed a series of open-roof homes to live in. Using whale bones, native hardwoods, and objects recovered from the sea, they built large open rooms with sea views. Without wells or electricity, they collected rainwater from the roofs and stored it in cisterns for bathing and washing. The master bath had a large tree that grew up right up through a large hole in the roof. Large windows facing the prevailing trade winds had plexiglass panes that could be lowered into place. The bedrooms surrounded a central dining room, veranda, and large bar made from a humpback whale's jawbone. In the early years, there was not even a road to Moonhole. While it was a community before, now the Moonhole is a private nature preserve. Number 2. The Water Tower Home. In Belgium, there stands a water tower that used to be used as a German spy outpost during the Second World War. Years later, it was reconstructed into a full-on home where people can live, despite the home itself being 100 feet off the ground. So it's a remote home in a different kind of sense. The work was done by Mauro Brigham of Bomb Design Studio, who completely repurposed the water tower into a high-tech, modern residence that offers all the amenities of a typical house, from a bedroom and a bathroom to storage space and a panoramic terrace. Remodeling did need to be done, as the outside and the inside of the water tower were slightly damaged, but the repairs allowed the architects to expand the interior in order to let them grow the house more. As if that wasn't enough, the building is equipped with state-of-the-art technology to allow perfect control of the temperature, the sounds in the rooms, and much, much more. Aesthetically, the water tower home doesn't look like a water tower in the traditional sense. It looks like a brick home that's really elongated, including having windows going from the ground up. Number 1. Rock House. In Serbia lies a river called the Drina. During the 1960s, a group of boys decided to go to a small island in the middle of the river and build a house for themselves. Due to the size of the island, they actually had to make a platform extension upon the rock, and then built the house on top of that. The boys used this house as their own little clubhouse to hide out in the summertime. The house still stands there to this day. Occasionally, the water levels do rise, and when they do, flooding destroys the house. However, every time it's been destroyed, someone rebuilds it, which is why it still stands. Why do people keep rebuilding it? There must be some kind of special magic there. It's hard to say, but it's a very popular place, and it's one of the most photographed spots in all of Serbia. Thanks for watching. What did you think of these isolated homes and buildings? Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!